Some home features people paid a fortune for got banned within days. Others were quietly made illegal. A few made houses impossible to sell. We found 100 of them, and we're starting with the one you'd least expect. Chapter 1. Banned before they had a chance. In 1947, a company called Trims sold wallpaper for children's bedrooms. Nursery rhyme characters, bright colors, ready pasted, meant to be dipped in water and smoothed onto the wall in an afternoon. The paper was soaked in DDT. Parents Magazine tested it and gave it a commendation. The advertising promised protection against disease-carrying insects, and mothers across America papered their babies' rooms in it. There was a matching lampshade that used the heat of the bulb to spread the insecticide invisibly through the room while the child slept. The product ran for about a year and then quietly vanished from the catalogs. What nobody understood in 1947 was that the same confident chemistry was already nailed, poured, wired, and glued into houses in every state. Insulation that gassed out formaldehyde for a decade, plumbing that dissolved from the inside, electrical panels that arced instead of tripping, and refrigerators that latched shut from the outside and could not be pushed open by a child. 20 of them made it into American homes before somebody in a hearing room, a courthouse, or a city council finally shut them down. Some took 11 years, some took 80, and several are still sitting inside roughly 40 million houses right now, completely legal, because outlawing a product has never once removed it from a wall. There is a number running underneath every story in this video: the gap, the distance between the moment the evidence was solid and the moment the thing became illegal. The gap is almost never short, and behavioral researchers have a clean explanation for why: normalcy bias. The human brain treats whatever is already installed as safe by default, because if it were dangerous, surely somebody would have said something already. A hazard bolted to a wall stops reading as a hazard. It reads as architecture. And architecture is the one thing nobody is afraid of. Manufacturers understood that instinct long before psychologists named it. The result is a national housing stock that works as an accidental museum of things that were perfectly legal right up until the day they weren't. 20 of them, roughly in the order America figured them out. Number 1. The refrigerator door that locked from the outside. Every refrigerator built in the United States before 1958 used a heavy mechanical latch, a chrome handle, a spring, a solid click, and a seal that held cold air like a bank vault. That was the selling point on every showroom floor of the 1930s and 40s. The problem arrived when the refrigerator stopped being a refrigerator. Broken units ended up on back porches, in vacant lots, and in junkyards, still latching perfectly. Children playing hide and seek climbed inside. The latch closed, and from the inside, with no handle and no leverage, a child could not generate enough force to release it. The seal that made the appliance a marvel made the empty cabinet a coffin. By the mid-1950s, the death toll had become impossible for Congress to ignore. The Refrigerator Safety Act passed in 1956, signed by President Eisenhower, and it required every refrigerator door sold in the country to be openable from the inside by a child. Manufacturers solved it with a magnetic gasket, a piece of engineering that cost almost nothing. The law applied only to units built after the 30th of October 1958, which meant the millions already in circulation stayed lethal for another 20 years. Public safety campaigns begging homeowners to unbolt the doors before hauling units to the dump were still running in the 1970s, roughly 30 years from the first latching refrigerator to the federal fix, and longer than that from the fix to the last child. Number 2. Insecticide wallpaper. Back to Trims. The DDT nursery paper hit shelves in 1947, and the production run ended the following year. And it did not end because a regulator intervened. It ended because it didn't sell well enough. DDT at that moment was the most celebrated chemical on Earth. Paul Mueller won the Nobel Prize in 1948 for identifying its properties as an insecticide. American advertising ran a cheerful jingle about DDT being good for you. Homeowners sprayed it on lawns, in kitchens, on pets, and directly onto children's hair to kill lice. Municipal trucks fogged entire neighborhoods on summer evenings while kids rode bicycles through the cloud. Rachel Carson published Silent Spring in 1962. The newly created Environmental Protection Agency banned most agricultural use of DDT in the United States in 1972. So the wallpaper stopped in 1948. The federal ban landed in 1972. A 24-year gap, and the only reason the nursery product isn't a bigger scandal is that American mothers had already voted against it with their wallets. Consumer indifference protected more children than regulation did, which is not a comforting sentence. If you're wondering how that got approved, so is everyone else. Number 3. The radioactive drinking water, crock. The Revigator was patented in 1912 and sold through the 1920s and into the 1930s. It was a ceramic jar, roughly the size of a kitchen water cooler, lined on the inside with carnotite, a uranium and radium-bearing ore. The printed instructions told families to fill it before bed, let the water sit against the radioactive lining overnight, and drink 6 or more glasses of the result every single day. Radium was the most fashionable substance in America. Radium toothpaste, radium face cream, radium bread, and a tonic called Radithor, sold as triple distilled water containing certified radium. Eben Byers was a Pittsburgh steel magnate and amateur golf champion. He drank an estimated 1,400 bottles of Radithor. His jaw disintegrated, surgeons removed most of it, and holes opened in his skull. He died in 1932, was buried in a lead-lined coffin, and when his body was exhumed decades later, it was still radioactive. Federal regulators moved against the radium tonic trade. The Federal Trade Commission shut down the advertising, and the entire category evaporated within a few years. The physicists had been publishing warnings about radium exposure since the previous decade. It took a dead millionaire with no jaw to end it. Number 4. Sprayed asbestos and the popcorn ceiling. From the mid-1940s through the early 1970s, American builders sprayed asbestos-containing material onto structural steel for fireproofing and onto ceilings for acoustics and speed. That bumpy white texture across the ceiling of every mid-century bedroom existed because it hid drywall seams and required no finishing labor. The EPA banned spray-applied asbestos surfacing materials in 1973 under the Clean Air Act. The Consumer Product Safety Commission banned asbestos in patching and joint compounds in 1977. Then came the part that matters. Manufacturers were permitted to sell through existing inventory. Contractors bought that inventory. Asbestos ceiling texture kept going up in American homes into the mid-1980s, years after the ban that supposedly stopped it. Roughly 30 million homes in the United States still have textured ceilings from that window. Sanded, scraped, drilled, or damaged during a renovation, it releases fibers that lodge in lung tissue and produce mesothelioma 20 to 50 years later. That latency is the whole trick. Human risk perception is calibrated to immediate feedback. A stove burns instantly, and the lesson lands forever. A ceiling that kills a renovator in 2044 for something he did on a Saturday in 1994 generates no lesson at all, which is exactly why the ceiling stayed legal for 30 years. Number 5. Lead paint. White lead was the standard pigment in American house paint for over a century. It covered beautifully, it lasted, and it was sweet to the taste, which is why toddlers ate the chips off the windowsills of every apartment in every city in the country. The medical evidence was not new. France, Belgium, and Austria banned white lead in interior paint in 1909. An international labor convention restricting it was adopted in 1921. The United States did not sign it. Meanwhile, the Lead Industries Association ran cheerful American advertising built around a cartoon boy in a painter's cap, marketing the pigment directly into nurseries and schoolrooms. Baltimore became the first American city to ban lead paint on interior surfaces in 1951, driven by pediatricians, tired of counting poisoned children in the same 20 blocks. New York followed in 1960, Chicago in 1971. The federal ban did not arrive until 1978, 57 years after the International Convention, 27 years after one American city figured it out on its own. Somewhere between 30 and 35 million American homes still contain lead-based paint under later coats, and the primary exposure route is not eaten paint chips. It is dust. Dust generated every time a painted window sash slides in its frame, which happens in old houses several times a day. Every day, forever. Number 6. Knob and tube wiring. The original electrical system of the American home, installed from the 1880s through the 1930s. Individual conductors run through porcelain tubes where they pass through framing and rest on porcelain knobs where they run along it. Hot and neutral, deliberately kept far apart, insulated in rubber and cloth, cooled by the open air of the wall cavity. The design assumed one thing, which was that air would always circulate freely around the conductors. Then the 1970s energy crisis arrived, and homeowners across the country blew loose insulation into their walls and attics, packing it directly around wiring that had been depending on airflow for 50 years. At the same time, houses wired for 3 light bulbs and a radio were now running window, air conditioners, electric ranges, dryers, and eventually entire home offices. Quick honest aside before we go further. Everything I know about reading these old houses, spotting the quality, catching the red flags, and running the place for almost nothing I put into a set of guides, and the link is down in the description if you ever want the shortcut. You don't need it to enjoy this, so let's get right back to it. Rubber insulation dries and cracks, and cloth sheathing crumbles away from the copper. There was never a single dramatic federal ban. Knob and tube was simply dropped from the National Electrical Code for new work by the 1930s and 40s, and then finished off by the insurance industry, which stopped writing policies on houses that still had it energized. Millions of American homes still have live knob and tube behind the plaster. It has been obsolete for 80 years, and it is still, at this moment, carrying current in bedrooms where people sleep. Number 7. Aluminum branch circuit wiring. Copper prices spiked hard during the Vietnam era, and between roughly 1965 and 1973, the American building industry solved that problem by wiring houses with aluminum instead. Not the thick service entrance cable, which is fine and still used today, but the 15 and 20 amp branch circuits feeding ordinary outlets and switches. Around 2 million homes got it. Aluminum behaves differently than copper, in ways nobody adequately tested first. It expands and contracts more with temperature. It creeps under the steady pressure of a terminal screw, and its oxide layer, unlike copper's, does not conduct. So the connection loosens by a fraction. Resistance rises, heat builds, the metal expands, the connection loosens further, and the loop runs for years inside a closed plastic box behind a wall plate until the box is hot enough to ignite the framing. The Consumer Product Safety Commission studied it and found that homes wired with pre-1972 aluminum branch circuits were dramatically more likely to have connections reaching fire hazard conditions than copper-wired homes. Not marginally, by a factor the agency measured in the dozens. No federal ban was ever issued. The industry walked away from it around 1973 and 1974. Codes tightened, and insurers did the rest. 2 million households were left with a hazard that has no cheap repair. The accepted permanent fix requires a specialized crimp on every connection in the house, and it runs into thousands of dollars. That was the first electrical story. The next one is worse, because at least aluminum wiring was an honest mistake. Number 8. The electrical panel that was never recalled. Federal Pacific Electric was one of the largest breaker panel manufacturers in the United States. Its stab lock panels went into millions of homes from the 1950s through the early 1980s. If a house was built or updated in that window, there is a real chance the gray metal box in the basement carries that name. A circuit breaker has exactly one job. When current exceeds its rating, it trips and cuts power before the wire behind the wall gets hot enough to start a fire. Independent testing over the following decades found stab-lock double pole breakers failing to trip on overload at rates no other manufacturer came close to. Worse, the Underwriters Laboratories listing that let those panels be sold in the first place was obtained through testing that was later found to have been misrepresented by the company. The Consumer Product Safety Commission opened an investigation in 1980. In 1983, it closed that investigation without issuing a recall, stating that it lacked the data and the budget required to establish a defect under the legal standard. The agency never issued a recall, and no ban ever followed. A New Jersey class action in 2002 found the company had violated consumer fraud law by knowingly distributing panels that did not meet the standard they were sold under. So the panels stay. They are legal to own, legal to sell a house with, and in most jurisdictions, legal to keep in service. Every other item in this video eventually got outlawed. This one just outlasted the agency assigned to it. Number 9. Ordinary glass in the shower door. Before 1977, the sliding door on an American bathtub enclosure and the sliding door onto an American patio were frequently made of annealed glass, the same glass as a window pane, just larger. When annealed glass fails, it does not crumble. It fractures into long curved blades that fall with the weight of the whole panel behind them. The Consumer Product Safety Commission was documenting tens of thousands of glazing injuries a year, concentrated brutally among children and the elderly, and a meaningful share of them involved severed tendons, arteries, and worse. Tempered glass was not a new invention waiting to be discovered. The process was patented in the 1870s, industrialized by the 1920s, and had been standard in American automobiles since the 1930s. The Federal Safety Glazing Standard for buildings took effect in 1977, so cars got shatter-resistant glass roughly 40 years before bathrooms did. And the reason is a documented quirk of human risk assessment called the availability heuristic. People judge how dangerous something is by how easily they can recall an example of it. Car crashes were on the front page constantly. A woman bleeding out on her own bathroom floor was a private tragedy that made the local paper at most. Same physics, same glass. One got legislated in a decade, and the other took 2 generations. Number 10. The insulation that was banned, then unbanned. The 1970s oil shocks turned home insulation into a national obsession, and urea formaldehyde foam insulation was the perfect retrofit product. It was mixed on site and pumped as a liquid foam through small holes drilled into the exterior wall cavities of old houses that could never otherwise be insulated. Hundreds of thousands of American homes got it, backed by federal energy tax credits. Then, the letters started arriving at the Consumer Product Safety Commission. Burning eyes, chronic headaches, nosebleeds, asthma attacks in children who had never had asthma, and nausea that cleared up whenever the family left the house and came back within an hour of returning. The foam off-gassed formaldehyde as it cured, and depending on humidity and installation quality, it kept off-gassing for 5 to 10 years. The commission logged more than 2,200 complaints involving over 5,700 people. On the 22nd of February 1982, it voted 4-1 to ban the product in homes and schools. The industry sued. On the 7th of April 1983, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans vacated the ban, ruling that the commission had failed to produce substantial evidence and had used the wrong statutory procedure. That August, the Solicitor General declined to take it to the Supreme Court, and the ban was formally lifted. Urea formaldehyde foam insulation has been legal in the United States ever since. Canada banned it in 1980 and never reversed. The industry collapsed anyway, because no American would buy a house with the letters UFFI in the listing. The market executed a product the courts had just exonerated, and that is the cleanest demonstration in this entire video of who actually enforces safety in the United States. Number 11. The attic insulation from Libby, Montana. For 70 years, a single mine in northwest Montana produced the overwhelming majority of the vermiculite insulation sold in the United States. It was marketed as Zonalite. Loose, gray-brown, pebbly, poured straight out of the bag between the attic joists by homeowners on a Saturday. It was fireproof, it did not settle, and rodents ignored it. The vermiculite deposit at Libby sat inside a natural formation of tremolite asbestos, one of the most aggressive fiber types known. The ore came out contaminated. It was processed contaminated, bagged contaminated, and shipped to hardware stores contaminated. From 1919 until the mine finally closed in 1990. Roughly 1 million American addicts got it. The town of Libby itself was devastated. Hundreds of residents died of asbestos-related disease and thousands more were diagnosed in a community of a few thousand people. In 2009, the EPA declared its first-ever public health emergency in Libby. 71 years of production. The federal advice to homeowners today is not to remove it. It is to leave it completely alone, never store anything in that attic, and never let anyone go up there without professional containment. An entire generation insulated their houses with something that is now considered too dangerous to touch. Number 12. Lead pipes and lead solder. Roman engineers ran drinking water through lead, and Roman writers complained about it. Vitruvius recorded that workers in lead had bad color, and that clay pipe carried healthier water. That was 2,000 years before American cities stopped doing it. Lead service lines connected millions of homes to municipal mains through most of the 20th century. And even in copper-plumbed houses, the joints were sealed with 50/50 lead solder well into the 1980s. The Safe Drinking Water Act amendments of 1986 finally banned lead pipe, lead solder, and lead flux in any plumbing connected to a public water system. An estimated 9 million lead service lines are still buried under American streets and yards. The protective mineral scale inside them is the only thing keeping the lead out of the tap. And when a city changes its water chemistry, that scale can strip away, which is precisely what happened in Flint, Michigan in 2014. In 2024, the EPA finalized a rule requiring nearly all remaining lead service lines to be replaced within a decade. 2,000 years of documented evidence. Ban in 1986. Full removal projected somewhere in the 2030s. If you're getting something out of this, hit subscribe. This channel takes apart the hidden systems inside ordinary life every week. And the next 8 items are the ones that reach into houses built after your parents were born. Number 13. The plumbing that dissolved. Polybutylene pipe entered American construction in 1978 and was, on paper, brilliant. Flexible gray plastic, cheap, fast to install, no soldering, no rigid runs. It was marketed as the pipe of the future, and it went into somewhere between 6 and 10 million American homes. concentrated heavily across the Sun Belt, where the building boom was loudest. Municipal drinking water in the United States is chlorinated, and chlorine is an oxidizer. It attacked the polybutylene resin from the inside, flaking microscopic layers off the pipe wall year after year and propagating fractures outward. The failure gave no warning at all. The pipe held perfectly at full pressure, until it didn't, usually behind a finished wall or above a ceiling, and usually while nobody was home. The class action that followed, Cox versus Shell Oil, settled in 1995 for roughly $950 million, one of the largest plumbing settlements in American history. Polybutylene was removed from United States building codes in the mid-1990s. There was never a federal ban. It simply stopped being code legal, the manufacturers stopped making it, and insurance carriers started refusing to write policies or demanding replacement first. Homeowners who discover gray pipe today pay for the repipe themselves, and there are still millions of houses on the market where nobody has checked. Number 14. The garbage incinerator inside the building. For decades, the standard way to handle household trash in a large American apartment building was to burn it in the basement. New York City alone had thousands of apartment house incinerators running by the 1960s, and single-family incinerators were sold for backyards and basements too. The chute on each floor fed a fire directly under the residence. What went in was ordinary domestic garbage. Plastics, batteries, paint cans, and treated wood combusted at temperatures far too low to break down what came off it. The output was a plume of particulates, dioxins, and heavy metals released at rooftop height into the middle of dense residential neighborhoods. Soot settled on the laundry lines and windowsills of the people who had produced it. The city ordered upgrades in the 1960s, which most buildings met with marginally better equipment. In 1989, it ordered residential incinerators phased out entirely, with the last of them shut down by 1993. The chute stayed. In pre-war apartment buildings across the Northeast, a small metal door still sits on every floor, feeding a compactor or a dumpster in the basement instead of a furnace. 40 years of burning household garbage inside the buildings where people slept ended not by a health study, but by a city council that finally ran out of patience. Number 15. The large capacity cesspool. A septic system treats waste. A cesspool does not. It is a lined or unlined pit that receives raw sewage and lets it soak directly into the ground, untreated, a few feet above the water table that the neighborhood drinks from. They stayed standard across huge parts of rural and coastal America, long after municipal engineering had solved the problem. The EPA finally banned large-capacity cesspools nationwide under the Safe Drinking Water Act, effective the 5th of April, 2005. Hawaii is the epicenter. The state still has tens of thousands of residential cesspools discharging into porous volcanic rock above the aquifer and out onto the reefs, and state law now requires every one of them converted or connected by 2050, a technology the Romans had already improved on, made illegal in the United States in the 21st century, with a compliance deadline in the second half of it. Number 16. The unvented gas heater. An unvented gas space heater has no flue, no chimney, no exhaust of any kind. Every product of combustion goes straight into the room. Carbon monoxide, nitrogen dioxide, and roughly a gallon of water vapor for every 100,000 BTUs burned. The efficiency claim was technically accurate because none of the heat escaped up a pipe. Neither did anything else. They were sold as supplemental heat for garages, additions, cabins, and drafty back bedrooms, which are exactly the spaces with the least air exchange. Carbon monoxide has no smell. The early symptoms are a headache and drowsiness, and the natural response to feeling drowsy in a warm room is to fall asleep in it. California, Massachusetts, Alaska, Minnesota, and a long list of cities banned them outright. Nearly everywhere else prohibited them in bedrooms and bathrooms. Kerosene versions were banned in several states and in New York City. Carbon monoxide alarms were not required in most American homes until the 2000s, which means the detection technology arrived roughly 40 years after the appliance that made it necessary. Number 17. The garage door opener with no eyes. A residential garage door weighs between 1 and 400 pounds and closes on a fixed track with a motor that does not care what is underneath it. The earliest openers had no reversing mechanism at all. Later ones reversed only after the door had already met resistance, which for a small child on the ground meant the door had already landed. Through the 1980s, the Consumer Product Safety Commission documented dozens of children killed and many more seriously injured, most of them under 5, most of them in the family's own garage. Congress amended the Consumer Product Safety Act in 1990 to require automatic reversal. The safety standard that followed required an external entrapment protection device, the photo I-beam near the floor, on every residential opener manufactured after the 1st of January 1993. Automatic garage door openers had been on the American market since 1926 and mass-marketed since the 1950s. The beam that stops the door costs a few dollars to install. The gap was 67 years. Number 18. The single main drain pool. A swimming pool pump pulls water through a drain at the bottom. If a body seals that drain, the suction does not release. The force generated is measured in hundreds of pounds, and no adult on the deck can overcome it by pulling. In 2002, Virginia Graham Baker, the 7-year-old granddaughter of a former United States Secretary of State, was held underwater by a hot tub drain and drowned while adults tried and failed to free her. Her mother spent 5 years in Washington. The Virginia Graham Baker Pool and Spa Safety Act was signed in December 2007 and took effect the 19th of December 2008. It requires anti-entrapment drain covers on every public pool and spa in the country, plus a second layer of protection, such as a safety vacuum release system or an unblockable drain. The Commission had been documenting suction entrapment incidents since the 1970s. The physics were never in question. It took a dead child with a politically connected family to move a bill that had been sitting there for 30 years. Number 19. Imported drywall that ate the house. Between 2001 and 2009, American demand for drywall exploded, driven by the housing boom and the rebuilding after Hurricanes Katrina and Rita. Domestic supply could not keep up, so builders imported it, much of it manufactured with contaminated gypsum. The board's off-gassed sulfur compounds. Homeowners reported a rotten egg smell, and then the metal in the house began to fail. Copper wiring and plumbing turned black. Air conditioning coils corroded through and failed repeatedly. Residents reported nosebleeds, headaches, and respiratory problems that improved whenever they left. The Consumer Product Safety Commission received thousands of reports across more than 40 states. In 2010, the Commission and the Department of Housing and Urban Development issued remediation guidance, and the guidance was brutal. Remove all of the problem drywall. Then replace the electrical wiring, the gas piping, the fire sprinkler system, and every smoke alarm in the building, because the corrosion had already compromised them. Not a ban, technically. The import trade collapsed. The litigation ran for a decade, and the standards were rewritten. The houses were gutted to the studs. Number 20. The crib rail and the blind cord. Two products designed for children's rooms, both standard for over a century, both finally killed in the last 15 years. The dropside crib let a parent lower one rail to lift a baby out without bending. When it failed, a gap opened between the rail and the mattress, and an infant who rolled into that gap could not get out. Dozens of deaths were tied to dropside entrapment in the 2000s, and more than 11 million cribs were recalled between 2007 and 2010. In June 2011, the Consumer Product Safety Commission banned dropside cribs outright, including manufacture, sale, resale, and use by hotels and childcare centers. Looped window blind cords are simpler and worse. A hanging loop at toddler height is a functioning noose, and the Commission has recorded child strangulations from them at a rate of roughly 1 a month for decades. The industry resisted a mandatory rule for over 20 years. In 2018, an updated standard finally made cordless the default on stock blinds sold in American stores. Custom-ordered blinds were exempt. So, what actually connects 20 items across 150 years of American housing? Every single one followed the same 3-phase pattern. Phase 1. The product is sold as progress, and the pitch is always speed, cost, or modernity. Phase 2. The harm shows up scattered across thousands of unrelated households, so no individual family has enough information to identify a pattern, and every institution assumes another institution is watching. Psychologists call that diffusion of responsibility, and a housing market is the most efficient diffusion machine ever built. Phase 3. A ban arrives, usually after a specific identifiable person dies in a way that produces a headline. The buyer's jaw, the baker drowning, the children in the refrigerators. The record is consistent, and it is not flattering. American home safety regulation has been driven almost entirely by individual named tragedies, rather than by the statistics that were sitting on somebody's desk for the previous 30 years. And the last detail is the one that stays with you. A ban stops the next installation. It has never once removed anything from a wall. 35 million homes with lead paint, 30 million with asbestos-era ceiling texture, 9 million lead service lines, 1 million attics full of zonalite, millions of houses still running knob and tube. The banned house is not a museum piece from a black and white photograph. In America, it is roughly half the housing stock, and someone is buying one of those homes this afternoon. If that landed, subscribe. Chapter 2. When the law quietly caught up.
Some of these were sold as safety improvements. That is not a joke. That is the part nobody tells you when they talk about old houses. They were not oversights. Industries spent decades protecting them after the harm was already documented. Some of these will make you furious. Some will unsettle you in a way that does not leave once the video ends. Stay for number 1. It is not the oldest item on this list. It is the most active, right now, today, in houses that look completely ordinary from the street. These are 20 home features that were quietly made illegal. Number 20. The Murphy bed. A furniture company in New York City was killing people, not through negligence, through bad engineering on a product being sold to thousands of tenement landlords. The Murphy bed, a mattress mounted to fold into a wall cabinet, let landlords rent one room as both bedroom and living space. Efficient, popular. And when the hinge mechanism failed without warning, the bed snapped shut on whoever was inside and could not be opened from within. In 1911, New York's tenement housing laws banned Murphy bed installations in multiple occupancy rental buildings. The failure mechanism was documented. The harm was documented. The product was still being sold. Modern Murphy beds are legal everywhere now, rebuilt to updated engineering standards. The original design was not recalled. It was banned. Number 19. Open riser staircases. The open riser staircase has no solid backing between the treads, just open air. That gap was a deliberate design choice through the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. Architects liked the visual effect. The International Residential Code now requires that every gap in a staircase be small enough that a 4-inch sphere cannot pass through it. That rule exists specifically to prevent children's heads from becoming trapped between the treads. Builders knew children existed when they designed those stairs. The code had to tell them to account for that. New open riser stairs in residential construction are illegal unless gaps meet the 4-inch requirement. Nothing more to say about that one. Number 18. Built-in wall ironing boards. This one always looked safe to me. That was the problem. A folding ironing board recessed into a wall cabinet was a premium kitchen and laundry feature from the 1920s through the 1960s. Pull it out, iron, fold it back. The wall looks clean. The appliance disappears. What you cannot see, that cabinet sits inside the structural wall, directly against wood framing, insulation, and in many cases, active electrical wiring. Several house fires were traced to irons left on open boards, slowly conducting heat into the surrounding wall cavity with no visible sign until something above it started smelling wrong. Building codes now require fire-rated materials and specific clearances around any heated appliance installed within a wall cavity. New installations without those standards are prohibited. The elegant solution that made ironing invisible made the wall around it quietly dangerous. Number 17. Swimming pools without perimeter barriers. Before the 1980s, a residential swimming pool in most American jurisdictions required no fence, no cover, no barrier of any kind. Install a pool. Done. Direct access from the backyard, from the rear door, from wherever a 2-year-old could wander unsupervised. Drowning was one of the leading causes of accidental death in children under 5. Most incidents occurred in the family's own pool, not a public facility, not a neighbor's yard. The pool the family installed in their own backyard with nothing between it and their child. The Virginia Graham Baker Pool and Spa Safety Act of 2007 finally pushed states to require four-sided fencing with self-latching gates. This should have happened 50 years earlier. The data existed. The deaths were counted. The building code simply did not require anyone to act on it until enough years had passed. Number 16. Single-exit basement bedrooms. You wake up, something is wrong. You smell smoke. You have one door. It leads to a staircase. The staircase is the fire. That is the complete floor plan of a single-exit basement bedroom. A sleeping room with no egress window, no second way out, one door, one path, and no alternative when that path is already gone. For most of the 20th century, that was a legal bedroom. Add walls and a light switch. Rent it. Nothing required a window large enough for a person to climb through. Building codes now mandate egress windows in all sleeping rooms, large enough to exit and large enough for a firefighter to enter from outside. New basement bedrooms without them are illegal. The cheapest room to finish in the house offered the worst ODDS, the one night that actually counted. Number 15. Knob and tube wiring. In American homes built before 1940, the standard electrical system ran two separate insulated wires through the walls, one hot, one neutral, held by ceramic knobs nailed to joists and routed through ceramic tubes where they passed through wood. No ground wire. Rubber insulation with a design lifespan of roughly 25 years. Most building codes now prohibit new installations. Insurers in many states refuse to cover homes where it remains active. 4 million American homes may still contain original knob and tube systems. Some of that wiring has been in those walls for over 100 years. Nobody can verify from the outside whether it is still carrying current. Nobody can see the state of the insulation without opening the walls. It is simply in there. Number 14. Aluminum branch circuit wiring. The fire starts in the wall. You do not know it yet. You are asleep or making dinner or watching television. Inside the wall cavity, a connection at an outlet is arcing. The aluminum wire expands from the heat of normal current flow, and when it cools, it pulls slightly away from the brass terminal. Just slightly, not enough to notice. Enough to generate heat at the joint, inside a cavity where no one can see it. This is how aluminum branch circuit wiring fails. In the mid-1960s, American builders substituted aluminum for copper during a shortage. Cheaper, nearly as conductive. The thermal expansion problem was not understood until house fires started accumulating. The Consumer Product Safety Commission identified it as a hazard in the early 1970s. It was phased out of new construction. 2 million American homes still contain it. No recall, no mandatory correction. Just a note in the inspection report that most buyers do not fully understand when they sign. Number 13. Polybutylene plumbing pipes. Between 1978 and 1995, approximately 10 million American homes were plumbed with a gray flexible plastic pipe called polybutylene. Builders chose it heavily. Cheap, lightweight, fast to install. It reacts with chlorine in municipal water supplies. Over time, the walls become brittle. They fail, sometimes gradually, sometimes in one sudden burst that floods an entire floor without any warning. A class action settlement in the mid-1990s exceeded $900 million. Polybutylene was removed from all approved plumbing codes. The homes built during those years still have it. You cannot see it from outside the wall. Number 12. Unvented gas space heaters in bedrooms. I want you to sit with this one for a moment. A gas heater with no flue, no pipe carrying combustion gases to the outside, burns fuel in the same sealed room where you sleep. It consumes the room's oxygen supply. It releases carbon monoxide directly into the air around you. Standard appliance across the American South, common in rural European homes. For most of the 20th century, completely legal in a bedroom. Here is the part that does not leave you easily. The warmth and drowsiness those heaters produced was partially a symptom of carbon monoxide acting on the blood. The thing that felt like comfort was a mild version of the thing that could stop your heart. Building codes now ban unvented combustion appliances in sleeping rooms in new construction. The ban came. The heaters stayed in millions of homes that already had them. Number 11. Asbestos vinyl floor tiles. Someone is renovating a kitchen. They are on their knees prying up old 9-inch tiles from the 1950s. A few crack under the pry bar. No mask. No reason to think they need one. The tiles they are cracking contain up to 30% chrysotile asbestos. They were the standard kitchen and bathroom flooring in American homes through the 50s and 60s. Durable, cheap, and available everywhere. The Environmental Protection Agency began restricting them in 1978. Millions were never removed. They stayed under every floor laid over them. If you leave them undisturbed, they are not classified as an active hazard. The moment you break one, the classification no longer applies to you. Every year, people renovate kitchens without knowing what is underneath the old floor. The asbestos did not go anywhere. It just waited for the next person who decided it was time for something new. Number 10. Open cesspools. A cesspool is a pit, not a septic system, not a treatment facility. A pit where household waste collects and seeps directly into the surrounding soil, with no treatment, no barrier, and no separation from the groundwater below. Open cesspools were standard residential waste management in American suburbs well into the mid-20th century. Not ancient infrastructure, some were installed in the 1940s and 50s in communities that still exist exactly as they were built. An estimated 500,000 residential cesspools remain in the United States. The highest concentration is on Long Island, where the aquifer that receives this waste also supplies the drinking water for millions of people. The Environmental Protection Agency banned new cesspool construction in 2000, not in 1960, not in 1980, 2000. Number 9. Urea formaldehyde foam insulation. In the 1970s, contractors could inject FOAM insulation into wall cavities through small drill holes. No demolition. Existing home, existing walls. Completely retrofitted. Energy companies marketed it as a modern upgrade. Homeowners paid for it. The Consumer Product Safety Commission banned it in 1982. As the foam aged inside the walls, it off-gassed formaldehyde into the living space. Residents reported persistent headaches, eye irritation, chronic respiratory problems. Canada had banned it 2 years earlier. The ban was partially overturned in court on procedural grounds. The product disappeared from the market anyway. Here is what stays with me. It cannot be removed, without demolishing the walls. In homes that received it in the 1970s, it is still in there, still curing, still releasing whatever it has left to release. Nobody put a label on the outside of those walls. Number 8. Asbestos acoustic ceiling tiles. This one depends entirely on what you do next. Drop-in acoustic ceiling tiles were standard in American basement ceilings through the 1950s, 60s, and early 70s. 2-foot panels, easy to swap, good at absorbing sound. Many contain 15 to 40% asbestos fiber. Left completely undisturbed, they are not classified as an immediate hazard. That distinction matters. And it is also, in practice, almost meaningless. The moment you reach up to replace a water-damaged tile, run a new cable, mount a light fixture, the dust from those panels goes airborne. You breathe it. There is no immediate sensation. You do not feel it happening. An unknown number are still suspended in American ceilings today. Leaving them undisturbed sounds like safety advice. Really, it is just a delay. Number 7. Abandoned coal gas pipes inside walls. The house has not had gas lighting since 1922. The pipes are still in the walls. Before electricity dominated in the early 20th century, millions of American and British homes ran small-diameter iron pipes through every room for manufactured coal gas. When those homes converted to electric lighting, the pipe networks were left in place, capped at the ends, sealed inside the structure with everything else. Iron corrodes from the inside out over decades. End caps fail. In older homes where the original gas distribution network remains, a failed cap inside a wall cavity allows trace gas to migrate silently through the building structure with no surface sign of any kind. Many building codes now require professional removal or certified decommissioning of all abandoned gas distribution systems. They were not removed from the homes that already had them. The pipes are in those walls right now, in houses where people have lived for decades without ever being told. Number 6. Asbestos cement exterior cladding panels. Transite panels, Portland cement, reinforced with asbestos fiber. Widely used as exterior cladding on homes, garages, and outbuildings across the United States, Australia, and the United Kingdom from the 1940s through the 1960s. Fireproof, weatherproof, completely normalized. Production for new construction ended by the early 1980s. Thousands of these panels still clad garages, sheds, and home exteriors. Legal to leave in place. Illegal to cut, drill, sand, or break without licensed asbestos abatement. There is no label on them. They look like any other exterior wall panel. Generations of homeowners have drilled into them to hang lights, mount signs, fix downpipes, setting the drill down, going inside for dinner. They did not know. Most still do not. Number 5. Spray-applied asbestos fireproofing in residential basements. You are in a basement. There is a steel beam overhead. It has a thick gray textured coating. You have walked past it for years without thinking about it. From the late 1940s through 1973, spray-applied fireproofing was used on structural steel in commercial buildings and in certain residential basements. The material formed a coating designed to insulate steel long enough to delay structural collapse during a fire. It was often between 25 and 45% amosite asbestos, the brown variety, which researchers consider more carcinogenic than the chrysotile in floor tiles. The Environmental Protection Agency banned spray-applied asbestos fireproofing in 1973. It is still on those beams. The coating is frequently friable, meaning it crumbles under light pressure or simply on its own as it continues to age. In many homes, it sits directly above the workbench, above the storage shelves, in rooms that look and function like ordinary basements, used by people who have no idea that what is slowly flaking from the beam above them has a specific name, a specific toxicology, and a specific terminal disease attached to it. Nobody labeled the beam. Number 4. Radium-painted household fixtures. This is the one that physically bothers me to think about. From approximately 1910 through the 1940s, radium was the active ingredient in luminous paint applied to clock faces, thermostat controls, and household switch plates. Practical reasoning. They would glow faintly in the dark and could be found during a power failure. Radium has a half-life of over 1,600 years. Every object coated with it is still emitting radiation today, without stopping. The Radium Girls were young factory workers in New Jersey and Illinois, instructed to point their brushes with their lips before applying the paint. They developed devastating bone cancers. Several had their jawbones surgically removed as the absorbed radium dissolved the surrounding tissue. Their legal battles were the first to hold a corporation accountable for knowingly concealing industrial toxin exposure from the people harmed by it. Federal regulation ended radium in consumer products by the 1970s. Objects manufactured before that date are still fully radioactive today, without exception. If you find an old clock or household fixture that glows green in the dark without any power source, do not keep it on a shelf. Do not let a child hold it. It is doing exactly what it was designed to do, and it will continue doing it long after everyone alive today is gone. Number 3. Formaldehyde in manufactured housing, in manufactured homes and mobile homes, produced through most of the late 20th century. Structural panels, cabinetry, and flooring were built from particle board bonded with urea formaldehyde resin adhesives. Federal emission standards for manufactured housing were, for decades, significantly weaker than those applied to homes built on permanent foundations. After Hurricane Katrina in 2005, FEMA provided emergency housing trailers to tens of thousands of displaced residents across Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. These people had lost everything. They were given temporary shelter and told it was safe. Testing in 2008 found formaldehyde concentrations in many units above the thresholds considered safe for extended occupancy. Residents reported chronic respiratory illness, persistent nosebleeds, and ongoing eye and throat problems after months of living inside them. HUD tightened emission standards for manufactured housing with updated rules effective 2014. The harm was measurable before a single trailer was placed. The standards that could have addressed it existed. They simply did not apply to the housing category being given to people with nowhere else to go. Not by accident, by classification. Number 2. Galvanized steel water supply pipes. Galvanized steel replaced lead pipes in American homes through the first half of the 20th century. The reasoning was sound. Iron coated in zinc resists corrosion, cheaper than copper, better than lead, an actual improvement. The zinc lining corrodes from the inside out over decades. As it degrades, it exposes the steel beneath. The corroded walls absorb and concentrate lead from any lead solder joints or legacy supply lines upstream. Then release it in bursts, particularly after the water sits undisturbed for hours, or after any disturbance to the pipe network. Galvanized steel is banned in new residential water supply construction across most of the United States. It remains in millions of older homes connected to the lead solder joints, drawing water through systems that may still contain legacy lead segments further up the line. The pipe sold as the safer alternative was carrying lead inside it the entire time, collecting it from every upstream source, releasing it when the conditions were right. Nobody sent a notice to the houses that still have it. Number 1. Lead paint. Here is the one. Lead paint was used in American homes for centuries. By the early 20th century, some interior paints contained over 50% lead by weight. Internal industry documents show knowledge of the poisoning risk to children from residential exposure as early as the 1920s. Lead was not banned from residential paint in the United States until 1978. 29 million American homes built before that year still contain it. Lead causes irreversible neurological damage in children. There is no safe level, not a low one, not a trace amount. A child does not need to eat paint chips. Dust from deteriorating surfaces, from painted window frames opened and closed daily, from walls disturbed during renovation, that is sufficient for permanent cognitive harm in a developing brain. The Centers for Disease Control states that no safe blood lead level in children has ever been identified. After a federal ban nearly 50 years ago, an estimated 500,000 American children between ages 1 and 5 still have elevated blood lead levels today. Not in derelict buildings, in ordinary homes, in houses that passed inspection, in neighborhoods that look completely normal, in families that were never handed a test kit or a warning when they moved in. Every home built before 1978 is a potential exposure site. Most have never been tested. Most occupants have no idea what is inside their baseboards, their window trim, their painted doors. Some features on this list were made illegal quickly after harm that affected a handful of people. This one took decades of documented, published, industry-acknowledged harm to reach a ban. And the ban did not fix the homes that already existed. It just made it illegal to do it again. Every feature on this list is a record of what was considered acceptable and who was expected to absorb the cost when it turned out not to be. Drop a comment if you have ever found something in an old house that you could not explain. A capped pipe, a sealed door, something behind the walls that was not on any plan. I read every one. If this changed how you see old buildings, hit like and subscribe. I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and do not forget to subscribe.
Chapter 3. Security that turned into danger. Picture the safest looking house on the street. Steel doors, cameras on every corner of the roofline, a front gate that seals shut like a bank vault. Now picture the family trapped inside that same house, pounding on their own reinforced windows, screaming for help, while the very features they paid thousands of dollars for lock the rescue out. This is not a scene from a horror movie. This is what happens over and over again when home security stops protecting people and quietly starts working against them. Here is the pattern almost nobody talks about. The more armor a person bolts onto a house, the safer they feel. And the safer they feel, the less carefully they think. Psychologists call it risk compensation. You hand someone a stronger shield and they lean harder on it, take bigger chances, drop their guard, until the shield itself becomes the thing most likely to hurt them. Security expert Bruce Schneier has a name for the other half of this trap. He calls it security theater. The stuff that makes you feel protected without actually making you safer. And a house wrapped in security theater is a house full of people who have stopped paying attention. That combination, false confidence stacked on top of a single weak point, is the exact recipe behind every failure you are about to see. Every feature on this list started as a smart idea on a product page. Every one of them promised control, and every single one turned around and bit the hand that installed it. These are 20 extreme home security features that backfired horribly. Some ended in lawsuits, some ended in emergency rooms, and the last one on this list ended in a courtroom where a burglar walked out with the homeowner's money and rewrote the law for the entire country. Stay with me, because the deeper we go, the worse the choices get, and the closer they hit to your own front door. Number 20. The fake camera that invited the break-in. It sounds like a genius shortcut. Buy a dummy camera, mount it over the garage, glue a blinking red light to it, and let the fear do the work for free. The problem is that an experienced burglar has scouted 1,000 cameras, and it takes them about 2 seconds to spot the tells. No wiring running to it, a cheap plastic housing that no real brand uses, a little light that blinks in a steady pattern, when actual recording cameras almost never blink like that at all. The moment a scout confirms the camera is fake, something worse happens inside the homeowner's head. They relax. They tell themselves the house looks protected, so they skip the real system, leave the side window unlatched, stop double-checking the back door. That is the false security effect in action. And it is more dangerous than having no camera at all, because no camera at least keeps you honest. The decoy did not just fail to record the break-in, it manufactured the exact overconfidence that made the break-in easy, and then it hung there, filming absolutely nothing, while the house got emptied room by room. The homeowner paid $12 to feel safe, and the feeling itself was the vulnerability. Number 19. The smart system that dies the second the power does. A modern setup gets sold as a fortress in a box. Cameras, motion sensors, sirens, all humming through the home Wi-Fi, and a cloud account, all glowing green on the app. It looks unbeatable on the phone screen. Then, a storm rolls through the neighborhood. The power flickers, the router goes dark, and every device on that network goes blind at the same instant. No recording, no alerts, no siren. Now here is the part the sales page buries. You do not even need a storm. Wi-Fi jammers and signal blockers are cheap, small, and sold all over the internet. And a burglar who knows your whole system runs on wireless can knock the entire thing offline from the sidewalk without touching a single wire. Experienced criminals watch the weather, and they watch for wireless-only homes, because to them, a blackout or a jammer is not bad luck, it is a scheduled window. The homeowner built an entire fortress balanced on one invisible cord, the internet connection, and never installed the battery backup or the cellular failover that was supposed to catch it. The night that cord gets cut is the exact night the cameras were needed most, and that is the night they see nothing. Number 18. The GPS tracker that broadcasts the family's location to strangers. This one starts with pure good intentions. Slip a small GPS tag onto the car, into a backpack, onto the dog's collar, so nothing is ever lost again. But a cheap tracker with weak security is a two-way street, and the same signal that tells the owner where their stuff is can tell anyone else where the family is right now in real time. There have been documented cases of budget trackers and connected devices leaking location data wide open, streaming a live position that was never meant to be public. Put that feed in the wrong hands, and the danger is obvious. A thief does not have to guess whether anyone is home. They watch the little dot leave the driveway, cross town, and settle at the office. And now they know the house is empty and roughly how long they have. It gets darker when the wrong hands belong to an abusive ex or a stalker, because a tracker, meant to protect a family, becomes a tool to hunt one. The device promised peace of mind. What it actually delivered was a live map of exactly when to strike. Number 17. The motion floodlights that drew the map for the thieves. Bright lights feel like safety. A dark yard is unsettling. A lit yard feels controlled, so people ring the whole property in motion-activated floodlights and sleep a little easier. But think about what those lights actually teach the person standing at the edge of the yard at midnight. Every time a light snaps on, it advertises its own coverage, and every dark patch it leaves behind is now a labeled, glowing invitation. A scout walks the perimeter one time, notes which corners flare up and which stay black, and walks away with a free blueprint of every blind spot on the lot. There is a second trick most people never notice. Bright floodlights actually blind the homeowner looking out from inside. Your eyes adjust to the glare, and the shadows beyond the light get deeper and harder to read, so the person the lights were meant to protect can see less, not more. And in a street full of lights triggering on cats and blowing trash all night, the neighbors stop looking entirely. The one time a light means something real, everyone within 100 yards seconds has already trained themselves to ignore it. Number 16. The guard dog that made friends with the burglar. People spend serious money on protection breeds and bite training, picturing a snarling wall of muscle guarding the door. Here is the uncomfortable truth about most dogs. A dog is a social animal that wants food, calm energy, and a friendly hand. And a burglar who has done this before understands that better than the owner does. A pocket full of treats, a low, soft voice, a slow, unthreatening approach, and the fearsome guard dog is rolling over for belly rubs while the house gets cleaned out around it. It gets worse in two directions. Some intruders simply poison or lure the dog away first, so the whole defense is gone before the break-in even starts. And on the flip side, if that dog ever does bite the wrong person, the owner is staring down a lawsuit because now they own an animal a court can call dangerous. Either way, the real damage is psychological. The owner trusted the dog so completely that they stopped locking up like they should. Nobody ever trained the animal to tell a threat from a stranger with a snack, and that single gap is where the entire plan quietly falls apart. Number 15. The biometric safe that locked the valuables away from its owner. A fingerprint gun safe or document safe sounds like the future. No keys to lose, no combination to forget, just your thumb and instant access. Until the exact moment it matters. Biometric readers are finicky and unforgiving. A wet finger, a small cut, a callus, a dead battery, a cold morning, or a scanner that simply decides today it does not know you, and the one thing built for an emergency becomes a sealed metal box you are now trying to claw open with shaking hands, and stress makes it worse in a way people never planned for. When adrenaline hits, fine motor control drops, your hands sweat and tremble, and a fingerprint that reads fine on a calm Tuesday fails again and again in the one situation that safe exists for. Most of these safes ship with a backup key or code precisely because the makers know the reader will fail, but owners lose that key or forget that code within a month because the whole reason they bought biometric was to stop dealing with keys. So the nightmare writes itself. Glass breaks downstairs. Someone reaches for the safe, holding the very thing meant for this moment, and the reader just blinks red and red and red, while the seconds that actually count bleed away. Number 14. The whole home hub sitting one password away from total control. Convenience is seductive, and the pitch is irresistible. Link the locks, the cameras, the garage, the thermostat, and the alarm into one slick app and run your entire house from your phone. But in doing that, you quietly did something dangerous. You took every lock in your life and tied it to a single key. One account, one password. If that password gets phished or reused from a website that later gets breached or simply guessed, an intruder does not have to break anything physical at all. They log in from anywhere on the planet. They watch your cameras to learn your schedule, wait until the house is empty, pop the smart lock, and roll the garage door open like they own the place without ever leaving a broken window as evidence. And there is a slower version of this failure that catches thousands of people. The company behind the hub gets bought, shuts down, or kills the app. And overnight, the locks and cameras you depend on turn into dead plastic because they only ever worked through servers that no longer exist. You did not build a fortress. You built a house with one door, then posted the key to the same internet everyone else lives on, and trusted a company to keep the lights on forever. Number 13. The automatic gate that crushed what it was built to protect. A heavy motorized gate at the end of the driveway is the ultimate status symbol of a secure home. It is also a several hundred-pound slab of steel driven by a motor that does exactly what it is told, whether or not something living is in the way. Cheaper or badly installed gates skip the obstacle sensors, or the sensors quietly fail and nobody ever checks them because the gate keeps working right up until the day it does not. Then a car eases through a beat too slow, or a child chases a ball into the gap, or a pet darts through at the wrong second, and the gate closes on flesh with no idea it should stop. There is also a security hole hiding inside the convenience. Automatic gates invite tailgate, where someone on foot simply slips through behind an authorized car in the few seconds the gate stays open, walking right past the barrier that cost a fortune. And in a power outage, a poorly configured gate faces an impossible choice. Fail open, and the house is wide open. Fail closed, and the family may be trapped on the wrong side in an emergency. The feature bought to keep danger out becomes the single most dangerous moving object on the whole property, sitting right where the family passes it every single day. Number 12. The beware of dog sign that became a confession in court. This is one of the strangest legal traps in all of home security, and almost nobody sees it coming. A homeowner posts a bright yellow warning sign to scare off intruders. It feels responsible. It feels protective. But if that dog ever bites someone, a delivery driver, a meter reader, a kid who wandered in, that sign can be dragged into a courtroom as evidence that the owner already knew the dog was dangerous. In plain terms, you posted a written notice admitting your dog is a threat, and the injured party's lawyer will happily read it back to a jury as proof you were on notice and did nothing. The warning meant to reduce your liability quietly becomes the other side's strongest exhibit. It can raise your insurance exposure, weaken your defense, and turn a gray area case into a clear loss. There is a bitter irony in it. The honest homeowner who warns the world gets punished harder than the careless one who never posted anything at all. The sign did not protect the house. It built the plaintiff's case. In the owner's own words, bolted right to the owner's own fence. Number 11. The doorbell camera that got its owner sued by the neighbors. Video doorbells feel like a pure, clean win. A little glowing camera on the porch, watching the front step, finally catching the package thieves. But that lens does not politely stop at the edge of your property. It routinely captures the public sidewalk, the street, and a clear view straight into the neighbor's yard, windows, and daily comings and goings. Increasingly, that has turned into real disputes and real lawsuits over privacy, with the camera owner on the losing end. And most people forget these doorbells record audio too, which drags in a whole second layer of law, because several states require every person in a conversation to consent to being recorded, and a doorbell quietly capturing the sidewalk chatter can cross that line without the owner ever realizing it. Then there is the footage itself, sitting on a company's cloud servers, where it can be subpoenaed, breached, or handed over in ways the owner never signed up for. The device installed to feel a little more secure created a brand new legal liability that simply did not exist before, and turned a friendly neighbor into an opposing party in a lawsuit. The porch got watched. So did everyone. The owner never meant to record. Number 10. The security camera that let a stranger speak to the children inside the home. This is the one that should genuinely scare you, and it is completely real. Indoor cameras and baby monitors running on weak accounts, default passwords straight out of the box, and credentials reused from some site that got breached years ago have been hijacked by total strangers. There are documented cases of intruders taking over the camera, watching a child's bedroom, panning and tilting the lens, and speaking through the built-in speaker directly to the kid, sometimes for their own amusement, sometimes far worse. Sit with that for a second. The parents bought the camera to watch over their children. Instead, they mounted a window that a stranger climbed through, not to steal a television, but to reach into the most protected room in the house and put a voice inside it. And it almost always traces back to two boring, preventable failures: the password that was never changed from the factory default, and the account that reused a leaked password from somewhere else. There is no failure on this entire list more intimate or more terrifying than a protective device that quietly hands an outsider a voice inside your child's room. If this is opening your eyes, take 1 second and subscribe, because this channel breaks down the hidden psychology behind the things we trust every single day: the systems, the gadgets, and the quiet assumptions that run our lives. Now, stay locked in, because from here on, the stakes stop being about property and start being about human bodies. Number 9. The alarm that cried wolf until the police stopped coming. An oversensitive alarm system feels like pure vigilance. It goes off for the cat, for a low branch tapping a window, for a gust of wind against a loose sensor, and each time the owner sighs, resets it, and moves on. But every one of those false alarms is training. It trains the family to tune out the siren completely, so it becomes background noise instead of a warning. And in city after city across the United States, it trains the response system to give up on the address, because repeat false alarms trigger escalating fines, permit suspensions, and a formal drop down the priority list. Some departments will flat out stop dispatching officers to a chronic false alarm home, or charge a heavy fee every time they roll a car for nothing. Psychologists call this alarm fatigue, and it is the same reason hospital staff can stop hearing a monitor that beeps all day. So, on the night the break-in is finally real, the siren screams into a house where everyone learned long ago to ignore it, wired to a department that has already flagged this address as a waste of a patrol. The system did not fail because it was too weak. It failed because it was too loud, too often, about nothing at all. Number 8. The panic room that trapped the people it was built to save. A safe room is supposed to be the last line of defense. Thick walls, a heavy door, a place to seal your family away, and simply wait for help. But a panic room is only ever as smart as its worst detail, and most are built around the wrong threat. A door that locks like a vault from the threat side, but jams or fails from the inside. No independent phone line, no cellular signal that can punch through reinforced walls, so the family is sealed inside a concrete box the outside world cannot hear. No fresh air supply, no manual override, no plan for a medical emergency happening inside the room itself. People have found themselves locked inside their own safe room with no way to call out and no way to get out, which turns the ultimate refuge into a sealed vault with a family inside. And if a fire starts while they are sheltering from an intruder, that fortified box becomes an oven with a door that will not open. The room performed its one design job perfectly. It kept people from getting out. It just never once checked which people it was keeping in. Number 7. The electric fence that shocked the family instead of the intruder. An electrified perimeter sounds like a hard line that nobody dares cross. But electricity does not read intentions, and it does not wait for a burglar to test it. A fence wired too hot, installed without the proper current limits, or left without clear warning signs, energizes for whoever touches it first, and that person is almost always a member of the household. The kid retrieving a ball near the line, the owner doing yard work along the fence, the family pet that leans into it chasing a squirrel. Improperly powered security fencing has caused serious injuries to the very people who live behind it, and in a lot of places, it drops straight into illegal territory precisely because of that risk, with strict rules on voltage, pulse, signage, and height, or outright bans in residential areas. Cross those lines, and the homeowner is not a protected defender anymore. They are a liability waiting to be sued or charged. The barrier meant to punish trespassers mostly ends up punishing the people who live there for one simple reason. They are the ones near it every single day, and the intruder is there for 10 minutes once. Number 6. The chemical booby trap that gassed its own maker. Somewhere out there is a homeowner who decided a rigged canister of pepper spray or tear gas by the door was a clever little surprise for an intruder. Here is the flaw welded into every booby trap ever built. It cannot tell who is opening the door. It fires on the trigger, not on the target. So the person who eats that cloud first is almost always the owner who forgot the trap was armed, or a spouse, or a kid, or a firefighter, or a police officer forcing entry during a real emergency to save someone inside. And the legal reality is brutal and clear. Setting a trap specifically designed to injure is itself a crime in most of the country, treated as a form of assault regardless of who it hits, which means the homeowner can end up gassed and criminally charged in the same afternoon. There is even a slow failure hiding in it. These canisters degrade, leak, and lose pressure sitting rigged for months, so the odds it fires wrong climb the longer it waits. The trap kept no one out. It just sat there, patiently, waiting for the wrong person to open the door, and the wrong person was usually family. Number 5. The razor wire and spikes that turned an intruder into a plaintiff. This is where the fortress mindset slams into the law and loses badly. A homeowner tops the fence with coils of razor wire or lines the wall with steel spikes, picturing a clear, brutal message to anyone thinking about climbing over. But across much of the United States, a property owner can be held liable when someone is seriously injured on their land, and that responsibility does not politely vanish just because the injured person was trespassing. Hidden hazards, sharpened traps, and dangerous devices meant to maim open a wide door to lawsuits, and there are real cases where the person breaking in walked away from the hospital with a legal claim against the very homeowner they were trying to rob. Some places go further and specifically outlaw traps designed to cause injury, no matter who trips them. Your insurance carrier hates them too, because a maiming hazard on your property is exactly the kind of thing that turns into a six-figure settlement with their name on the check. The wire was meant to keep all the danger on the outside of the wall. Instead, it manufactured a fresh lawsuit and invited it straight through the front door. Number 4. The homemade arm trap that ended in criminal charges. Every so often, a story surfaces about someone who rigged a firearm, a spring gun, or some improvised armed device to fire automatically at whoever breaks in. To the person building it in the garage, it feels like ultimate justice, waiting patiently in the dark. In the eyes of the law, it is one of the fastest ways ever invented to destroy your own life. An automatic weapon has no judgment. It cannot see that the figure in the doorway is a lost neighbor, a delivery driver at the wrong address, a firefighter, a police officer, or a curious child who slipped inside. It only knows the trigger tripped. When these devices go off, they frequently hit the wrong person entirely, and when they do, the builder is not treated as a homeowner defending a family. They are treated as someone who deliberately set a lethal trap, and prosecutors charge exactly that. The law draws a hard line here. and it draws it on purpose. You are allowed to defend yourself when you are present, and facing a real threat you can actually see. You are not allowed to leave a machine behind to kill on your behalf, because a machine cannot weigh a life. The device promised control over a nightmare. It delivered a wrong body on the floor and a prison sentence for the person who built it. Number 3. The smart lock that locked the owner out in the cold. The keyless deadbolt is the poster child of the entire modern smart home. Tap the app, walk right in, throw your keys away forever. Until the day the battery dies with no useful warning, or a firmware update bricks the mechanism overnight, or the Wi-Fi drops, or the one phone that holds the only credential runs flat in a parking lot across town. Now, the homeowner is standing on their own porch, in the rain, staring at a door that will not open, with no physical key anywhere, because the entire selling point was getting rid of keys in the first place. And there is a sharper edge to this one. The same connectivity that locks you out can let someone else in, because researchers keep demonstrating relay attacks and Bluetooth exploits that pop certain smart locks open from a few feet away. No key and no app required. Some outdoor keypad locks even wear down at the exact buttons you press every day, quietly printing your code onto the keypad for anyone who looks closely. The lock removed the one thing that always, boringly worked, a metal key in a metal cylinder, and replaced it with a fistful of brand new ways to end up standing outside your own house. Or worse, to find someone already inside it. Number 2. The fortress door the firefighters could not get through. This is the fortress paradox at its most lethal, and it kills people every year. A homeowner terrified of break-ins hardens everything. Steel security doors, iron bars welded over every window, 3 deadbolts, gates across the entries. The whole house slowly turned into a bunker. And for a while, it genuinely works. Nothing gets in. Then one night, a fire starts in the kitchen, or someone inside collapses with a heart attack. And the people who have to reach that family, the firefighters and the paramedics, hit the exact same barriers a burglar would. Barred windows that will not break or bend. Steel doors that shrug off a battering ram and eat precious minutes under a saw. Every second those crews lose fighting the homeowner's own defenses is a second stolen from the people trapped and choking inside. This is not a rare freak event. Fire departments have warned about it for decades, because burglar bars with no interior quick release have turned survivable house fires into fatal ones, sealing families inside the very rooms they were hiding in. Building codes demand emergency egress for this precise reason, and the fortress homeowner overrode all of it in the name of safety. The house was built to keep the dangerous world out. It succeeded so completely that it kept the rescue out too, and turned one bad night into the last one. Which brings us to the single most extreme home security failure of all time, and the one that changed the law for everyone. Number 1. The trap gun, and the burglar who sued the homeowner and won. This is not a warning, or a pattern, or a what if. It is settled American law, studied by first-year law students to this day, and it rewired how every homeowner in the country is allowed to defend an empty building. On a farm in Iowa, a property owner named Edward Briney got fed up with repeated break-ins at an old unoccupied house he owned nearby, so he set a trap. He rigged a loaded shotgun inside a bedroom, aimed at the doorway, wired so the barrel would fire at anyone who opened that door. Then he waited. A man named Marvin Katko broke into that empty house looking for old bottles and fruit jars, the kind of forgotten junk that turns up in an abandoned farmhouse. Opened the bedroom door, and the shotgun did precisely what it had been built to do. It tore away a large part of his leg. Now, here is where the entire fortress fantasy collapses in on itself. Katko, the intruder, the man committing a crime at the exact moment he was shot, turned around and sued the homeowner, and Katko won. A jury awarded him damages, including punitive damages, and the Iowa Supreme Court upheld it in a ruling that became a genuine landmark. The court's reasoning is the lesson under every single item on this list. You are not permitted to set a mechanical device to kill or seriously wound in defense of an empty building, because human life, even the life of a trespasser, is worth more than property, and a machine sitting in the dark cannot make the judgment that a present, thinking human being could. The homeowner who tried to build the ultimate punishment for intruders ended up writing a check to the very intruder his trap made. Read that back one more time, because it is the whole point. The house cannot think for you. The lock, the gate, the fence, the camera, the trap, not one of them can tell a friend from a threat, a child from a criminal, a rescuer from a robber. And the moment you hand your judgment over to a device waiting in the dark, that device will eventually turn its same blind force on the wrong person, on you, on your family, on the paramedic, sprinting up your steps to save your life. The strongest fortress on the street is only ever as wise as the person who built it, and no amount of steel, wire, or firepower has ever once been a substitute for staying awake and paying attention. And if the hidden dangers built into modern houses got under your skin, Wait until you see what old houses were hiding underground. The video on screen right now reveals why so many old homes were built with secret tunnels nobody talks about anymore. Chapter 4. Trends Everyone Regretted. There is a photograph of a living room from the 1970s that people still cannot stop staring at. Wall-to-wall cream carpet, heavy pleated drapes, and sunk right into the middle of the floor. A pit, a teal velvet conversation pit, ringed in gold trim, deep enough to seat a dozen people below floor level like a padded swimming pool for humans. When that pit was installed, it was the absolute height of sophistication. A decade later, it was the single biggest reason that house sat on the market and would not sell. And that pit is not just a story about bad taste. It is a case study in a psychological trap that has emptied bank accounts for 60 years straight. The same trap that convinced millions of homeowners to rip out perfectly good kitchens, drown every wall in the exact same shade of gray, and bolt a sliding barn door onto the one room in the house that desperately needed a lock. These are 20 of the boldest home trends people fell for hard and regretted almost immediately. Some of them are ancient history. Some of them were still selling last year. And the teal velvet pit on the thumbnail, that one is saved for the very end, because it might be the most expensive mistake on this entire list. Before the countdown starts, here is the thread that ties all 20 together. Human beings are wired to copy the group. When a trend appears everywhere at once, in every magazine, on every feed, in every neighbor's remodel, the brain reads that repetition as proof that the choice is safe. Designers call it social proof. Then novelty wears off faster than anyone expects. A quirk psychologists call hedonic adaptation. And the bold statement that felt thrilling on day 1 feels like wallpaper by month 3. That gap between the excitement of installing something and the boredom of living with it is where regret is born. Every single trend on this list lived and died in that gap. And there is one more force at work, the cruelest one of all. Once the money is spent and the work is done, admitting the choice was wrong feels like admitting you wasted all of it. So people cling to a trend they have already started to hate. That is the sunk cost trap, and it is the reason so many of these mistakes stayed bolted to the walls for years longer than anyone actually wanted them there. Number 20. Vinyl word art on the wall. Somewhere around 2008, a strange decree went out across suburbia. Every blank wall in the house was to be tattooed with a life instruction. Live, laugh, love, in flowing script above the couch. Gather in cursive over the dining table. Bless this mess pasted above a laundry basket. The words came as peel and stick vinyl decals. Cheap, fast, and available in every craft store in the country. The appeal was obvious. A bare wall feels unfinished, and here was a way to fill it in an afternoon for the price of a sandwich. That is the psychology of the low-effort win. The brain loves a big visual change for almost no cost or risk. And for about a year, those cursive commandments felt warm and personal. Then everyone had them. The exact same fonts, the exact same phrases, in the exact same spots. What was supposed to feel like a personal touch became the visual shorthand for a home with no personal touch at all. Removing the vinyl often peeled the paint right off the drywall underneath, so the reward for chasing the trend was a patchy repair job. The words told you to live, laugh, love. The wall behind them told a story about a purchase made in 90 seconds and regretted for years. Number 19. Rose gold and copper everything. Around 2016, warm metallics stormed the internet. Suddenly, the crisp chrome faucet was out and rose gold was in. Copper cabinet handles, blush pink shower heads, coppery pendant lights over the island, even rose gold cutlery, drying by the sink. It photographed like a dream, all soft and expensive looking, under warm light. People fell for it because of a mechanism designers quietly rely on, the halo of the new finish. A fresh, unusual metal signals that a home is current, and being current feels like winning. So homeowners swapped out every fixture in a matter of weeks. But rose gold was a moment, not a material. Trends in metal finishes move slowly for a reason, because replacing every handle, faucet, and light fitting is expensive and permanent feeling. By the time the copper faucets were installed, design feeds had already moved on to matte black and unlacquered brass. The blush fixtures that screamed 2016 aged about as gracefully as a haircut from the same year. And unlike a haircut, a bathroom full of pink metal does not grow back on its own. Number 18. The vessel sink. For a stretch of the 2000s, the sink climbed out of the counter and sat on top of it. The vessel sink, a bowl perched on the vanity like a decorative salad dish, was everywhere in magazine bathrooms. It looked like sculpture. It looked like a boutique hotel. It looked, frankly, incredible in the showroom. The draw was aspiration. A bowl sink turns a boring daily chore into a design moment, and the mind assigns huge value to objects that feel luxurious and rare. So the vessel sink sold by the millions. Then reality arrived every single morning. The raised bowl sits high, so water splashes straight over the rim onto the counter and the floor. The rim traps grime and toothpaste in a ring that never quite wipes clean. Tall faucets had to be added just to clear the bowl, which meant even more splashing. A design that promised a spa delivered a puddle. Homeowners learned the hard way that a sink is a tool used a dozen times a day, and beauty that fights function loses that fight fast. Number 17. Glass block walls. In the late 80s and into the 90s, the glass block wall was the future. Thick, frosted squares of glass stacked into partitions, shower surrounds, and even entire exterior walls. It let light through while blurring whatever sat behind it, and it carried a certain Miami, Art Deco, big shoulder pads energy that felt cutting edge at the time. Glass block sold on the promise of light plus privacy. Two things every homeowner wants at once. The mind treats that combination as clever, and clever feels like a smart buy. But glass block did not age into a classic. It froze in time. The moment the 90s ended, those chunky frosted grids started reading as dated in a way that was almost impossible to fix because glass block is heavy, mortared, and permanent. It cannot be repainted or refreshed. A homeowner stuck with a glass block shower was stuck with a small, cloudy monument to a decade that had already ended. Ripping it out meant demolition, not a weekend refresh. Number 16. Mirrored walls. Before glass block, there was the mirror wall. In the 70s and 80s, entire walls vanished behind sheets of mirror. The dining room, the living room, sometimes the whole staircase, all reflected back at double size. The pitch was seductive. Mirror makes a small room feel twice as large, and it throws light around like magic. That promise of a bigger space is hard to resist, because square footage feels like status, and a mirror offers the feeling of more space without the cost of an addition. So the glue guns came out and the mirror tiles went up. The problem was that a wall of mirror does not just double the room, it doubles the mess, the clutter, the fingerprints, and every awkward angle of the person walking past. It aged instantly, it smudged constantly, and those mirror tiles were glued on with an adhesive so aggressive that removal usually took the drywall with it. The trend that promised a grand, glamorous space delivered a fragile, dated funhouse that fought back the moment anyone tried to remove it. Number 15. Popcorn ceilings. For decades, builders sprayed a bumpy, cottage cheese texture across the ceiling of nearly every new home in the country. The popcorn ceiling was fast to apply. It hid imperfections in the drywall above, and it muffled sound between floors. For the builder, it was a shortcut. For the homeowner, it was just the way ceilings looked, so nobody questioned it. That is the quiet power of the default. When everyone's ceiling looks the same, the brain stops seeing it as a choice at all. It becomes invisible, and invisible feels safe. But the popcorn ceiling hid an ugly secret. Many of the ones sprayed before the late 70s were mixed with asbestos, which turned a simple cosmetic update into a hazardous, expensive removal job. Even the safe versions collected dust and cobwebs in every tiny crevice, could not be cleaned, and cracked yellow with age. The very texture that was supposed to hide flaws became the biggest flaw in the room. Scraping it off, wet, in overalls, is now one of the most hated weekend jobs a homeowner can inherit. Number 14. Carpet in the bathroom. This one still makes people flinch. For a good chunk of the 70s and 80s, wall-to-wall carpet crept into the bathroom. Plush, often in a bold color, wrapped around the base of the toilet and right up to the edge of the tub. The logic seemed sound at the time. Tile is cold under bare feet, and carpet is warm and quiet. So why not carry that comfort into the coldest room in the house? The appeal was pure sensory comfort. And comfort is an easy sell, because the mind imagines the cozy morning and conveniently forgets everything else that happens in a bathroom. And everything else that happens in a bathroom is exactly the problem. Carpet around a toilet and a tub absorbs water, humidity, and every kind of splash, then holds it against the subfloor where it breeds mildew and smell. It could not be properly cleaned or dried. What felt warm on day one turned into a permanently damp, unsanitary sponge that buyers would later refuse to even step on. Few trends have ever aged from cozy to horrifying quite as fast as the carpeted bathroom. Number 13. The giant jetted whirlpool tub. In the 90s and 2000s, no primary bathroom was complete without an enormous corner soaking tub studded with air jets, cultured marble decks, faux Roman columns, sometimes a little step up to a throne of a bathtub big enough for two. It was sold as the in-home spa, the reward at the end of a long day. People bought the fantasy of the nightly soak. The mind is brilliant at picturing the best possible version of a future. In this case, a candlelit bath every evening, and it happily ignores how rarely that fantasy actually happens. In real life, that fantasy happened maybe twice a year. The tub took forever to fill, the water went cold before the jets could warm it, and those hidden jet lines grew a film of mold and bacteria that pumped back out on the rare occasion anyone used them. Meanwhile, the giant deck ate up floor space that could have held a proper shower or storage. Homeowners eventually realized they had dedicated the best real estate in the bathroom to a dusty, moldy trophy they never climbed into. Number 12. Mounting the television above the fireplace. This one is more recent, and millions of people are living with the regret right now. When flat screens got light enough to hang, the fireplace became the obvious target. One focal wall, one clean mount, television and hearth stacked together in the center of the room. It looked tidy in the listing photos, and it solved the eternal question of where the TV should go. The poll here is the neat solution. A single, symmetrical focal point feels organized, and an organized room feels like a calm life. Then people actually sat down to watch. A television above a fireplace sits far too high, forcing everyone to crane their necks up at a punishing angle for hours. The heat and soot rising off the fire is genuinely bad for the electronics mounted right above it. What looked balanced in a photo turned into a nightly kink in the neck and a slowly cooking screen. Physical therapists even have a name for the strain it causes, and the fix usually means tearing the mount back down and starting over. The tidy solution created a brand new problem that only revealed itself once the room was full of people trying to relax. Number 11. Industrial farmhouse, Edison bulbs and all. In the 2010s, homes filled up with a very specific look. Exposed metal pipe shelving, reclaimed barnwood, black window frames, and everywhere, those amber Edison bulbs with the glowing squiggle filament hanging from black cloth cords. It was warehouse chic. It said this homeowner was creative, a little rugged, definitely not basic. It spread because it signaled identity. Buying into a look is a way of telling the world who you are, and the industrial aesthetic promised a rugged, authentic story to anyone who walked in the door. But the story got tired. Those dim Edison bulbs, romantic as they looked, threw off barely enough light to read by, so kitchens and offices ended up frustratingly gloomy. The exposed pipe shelves collected grease and dust and could not hold much weight. Reclaimed wood splintered and warped. What started as a bold personal statement quickly became the single most predictable look of the decade, plastered across every coffee shop and rental in the country. Identity, mass-produced, stops being identity at all. Number 10. Shiplap on every surface. Then came the shiplap era. Thanks to a wildly popular home renovation show that began in 2013, thin, horizontal white planks marched across America. Accent walls, entire living rooms, kitchen islands, bathroom ceilings, even the sides of bathtubs got wrapped in crisp white shiplap. For a few years, it was the undisputed symbol of the modern farmhouse dream. Shiplap rode a wave of televised social proof. A trusted face on screen installed it in every episode. And watching an expert choose something again and again is one of the most persuasive forces on the human mind. So the planks went up by the millions. The trouble is that shiplap is essentially a series of horizontal ledges bolted to your wall, and every one of those grooves is a shelf for dust. It needs constant wiping. Worse, it became so completely tied to one show and one moment that it now instantly date stamps a room to the 2010s. Homeowners who covered every wall in it are now paying to pull it back down. A look that felt timeless while it was everywhere turned out to be one of the most time-stamped choices of the decade. Number 9. Open shelving in the kitchen. At the same time, upper cabinets started disappearing. The trend was to rip out the closed cabinets over the counter and replace them with open wooden shelves, styled with a few perfect ceramic bowls, a trailing plant, and a stack of cookbooks. In every photo, it looked airy, honest, and effortlessly cool. The fantasy sold itself. An open shelf, styled to perfection, suggests a calm and curated life, and the mind buys the fantasy of the life, not the reality of the chore. The reality of the chore showed up within days. Open shelves in a kitchen, catch airborne grease from cooking, and a steady film of dust, coating every dish and mug that is not used daily. Everything on display has to be perfectly arranged at all times, or the whole kitchen looks like clutter. Nobody actually lives with only 8 matching bowls, so the shelves either sat half empty and staged, or overflowed into a mess. Homeowners quietly went back to cabinets, having relearned something their grandparents already knew. Hiding your stuff behind a door is the entire point of a cabinet. If this countdown is already saving you from a remodel you were about to regret, do the future you a favor and subscribe. This channel breaks down the psychology behind the way we live every single week. Now, back to the trends that fooled everyone. Number 8. The all-white kitchen. For most of the 2010s, the dream kitchen had exactly one color: white. White cabinets, white subway tile, white quartz counters, white walls. A bright, clean gallery of a room with no color in sight. It looked pure. It looked expensive. It photographed like a magazine cover. White won because it reads as clean and high-end. And cleanliness is one of the most reliable emotional buttons in all of design. A spotless white kitchen promises a spotless, orderly life. That promise lasted until the first cup of coffee. A pure white kitchen shows every single splash, crumb, smudge, and fingerprint the moment it lands. Grease near the stove, coffee rings on the counter, scuff marks on the cabinet doors, all of it screams against the white. The kitchen that promised effortless cleanliness demanded relentless, exhausting cleaning just to look normal. And because it was tied so tightly to one decade, it also began to feel cold and sterile, sending homeowners scrambling to add back the warmth and color they had so carefully stripped out. Number 7. Sliding barn doors. The barn door slid into homes everywhere in the 2010s. A big rustic slab of wood hung from a black metal rail, rolling across the wall to close off a bathroom, a pantry, or a bedroom. It saved the floor space a swinging door would eat, and it delivered that farmhouse charm in one dramatic gesture. It sold on charm plus practicality, a combination the brain finds almost irresistible because it feels like getting 2 wins from a single purchase. Then people tried to actually use them. A barn door does not seal. It hangs a finger width off the wall, so it does not block sound, light, or smell, which is a genuine problem when the door in question is on a bathroom. It usually does not lock, which is an even bigger problem on that same bathroom. The heavy slab rattled on its track and needed regular adjusting. The rustic charm that looked so bold in a showroom turned out to be a door that failed at the one basic job every door is supposed to do, which is to close. Number 6. The fully smart, over-teched home. As technology got cheap, homeowners raced to automate everything. Refrigerators with giant touchscreens, faucets that turn on by voice, blinds, locks, thermostats, and light switches, all wired to an app. It felt like living in the future. It felt like the house itself was intelligent. This trend runs on the seduction of the upgrade. New technology promises a frictionless life, and the mind is powerfully drawn to the idea that the next device will finally make everything effortless. But technology ages faster than a house does. Within a year, apps stopped being supported, servers got shut down, and that $1,500 smart fridge screen turned into a frozen, useless panel bolted to the kitchen. Voice faucets misfired, smart locks died and left people stranded on their own porch. And every gadget became one more thing that could break, get hacked, or simply go obsolete. A regular light switch still works after 40 years. The smart home learned that the more brains you bolt onto a house, the more ways it finds to fail. Number 5. Drowning a room in one trendy color. Every few years, a single color takes over the internet, and homeowners drench entire rooms in it. For a while, it was a very specific dusty pink, the shade the internet nicknamed millennial pink, splashed across bedroom walls, velvet sofas, and tiled bathrooms. Other years, it was a deep moody teal, or a mustard yellow, or a specific sage green. The point was total commitment to one of the moment hue. Color trends spread through pure contagion. When a shade is suddenly everywhere online, being surrounded by it feels current and connected, and nobody wants to feel like the one room that got left behind. The catch is that a color this specific is also a timestamp this specific. A room painted in the exact viral pink of one particular year announces that year forever, the way avocado green kitchens still shout 1972. The bolder and more of the moment the color, the faster it curdles from fresh to dated. Homeowners who committed a whole room, sofa, and tile and all could not just repaint their way out. They had to rip out furniture and fixtures to escape a color that had felt so right for about 12 months. Number 4. The Tuscan kitchen. In the late 90s and early 2000s, suburban America decided it wanted to live inside an Italian villa. The Tuscan kitchen arrived in force. Heavy dark cherry cabinets, speckled brown granite counters, walls sponge painted in golden ochre and terracotta, wrought iron accents, and a mural of grapevines somewhere near the stove. It felt rich, old world, and important. It sold a fantasy of warmth and old money elegance. The mind attaches deep emotional value to a story, and the Tuscan kitchen sold the story of endless sun-drenched dinners in the Italian countryside, right there in a house in the suburbs. But the fantasy was extremely heavy. and extremely brown. All that dark wood and gold faux finish made kitchens feel dim, closed in, and instantly dated once the trend passed. The speckled brown granite and the travertine tile, sold as timeless stone, ended up dating the room just as hard as the paint did. The sponge-painted walls, once the height of craft, became the clearest possible marker of the early 2000s. Homeowners spent fortunes lightening, painting, and gutting these kitchens to undo them. The villa dream turned into a dark, dated box that swallowed light and cost a fortune to reverse. Number 3. 50 Shades of Grey. Then the entire country went gray. Starting in the 2010s and rolling on for years, gray became the default answer to every design question. Gray walls, gray vinyl plank floors, gray sofas, gray kitchen cabinets, and a beige-gray blend so common it earned its own name, greige. It was marketed as the safe, neutral, modern choice that would please any future buyer. And that is exactly why it spread so far. Gray was sold as the risk-free option, and a nervous homeowner reaches for whatever feels like it cannot possibly be wrong. Following the herd feels like insurance. But when everyone reaches for the same safe choice, safe becomes a trend, and trends die. Cold gray floors and gray walls started to feel flat, gloomy, and lifeless, more like a corporate office or a budget rental than a home. What was sold as timeless neutrality became the single most obvious marker of a certain decade of flipping and remodeling. The color chosen specifically to never go out of style went out of style precisely because it was chosen by absolutely everyone. Warmth came roaring back. Browns and creams and earthy greens, and a whole country full of gray rooms suddenly looked like yesterday. The greige flip that was supposed to appeal to every buyer started quietly repelling them instead, because buyers could date the renovation to the exact year just by walking through the front door. Number 2. The open concept floor plan. For more than 20 years, one idea ruled home design above all others: tear down the walls. Knock the kitchen, dining room, and living room into one enormous open space so families could flow together, entertain together, and never feel boxed in. Buyers demanded it. Renovation shows sledge-hammered walls in every episode to roaring approval. Open concept was not just a trend, it was practically a religion. It won because togetherness is a beautiful promise, and knocking down a wall feels like knocking down a barrier to a warmer, more connected family life. The mind falls hard for a purchase that seems to buy a better relationship. Then everyone was forced to actually live in it, at home, all at once, for a very long stretch. And the cracks in the open concept dream became impossible to ignore. With no walls, there is nowhere to escape. The noise from the television, the kitchen, and a phone call all collide in one giant echoing room. Cooking smells drift into every corner and cling to the furniture. There is no way to hide a messy kitchen from guests in the living room, and no quiet corner for one person while another watches TV 20 feet away. Heating and cooling one cavernous space is expensive and uneven. The dream of togetherness turned out to be the reality of never being able to get a moment of peace. Walls, it turned out, were not the enemy. They were doing a lot of quiet, thankless work all along. And that brings us to number 1, the one on the thumbnail, the sunken living room, otherwise known as the conversation pit. Start with the grandest version of it ever built. The most famous conversation pit in the world sits inside the Miller House in Columbus, Indiana, designed by the architect Eero Saarinen and dressed by the designer Alexander Girard, finished in 1957. A square of the floor drops away into a plush, sunken lounge lined with cushions, a fireplace glowing nearby. In its moment, it was the future of how humans would gather. Elegant, intimate, daring. And for a while, the whole country wanted one. Through the 60s and 70s, sunken living rooms and conversation pits dropped into homes everywhere, often carpeted, often ringed in bold velvet, sometimes in that unforgettable teal with gold trim. The pit sold the ultimate fantasy of glamour and connection. It physically pulled people down and together into one cozy hollow. And the mind reads that kind of dramatic, one-of-a-kind feature as the height of sophistication and daring. Nothing says bold like carving a hole in your own floor, but a hole in your floor is exactly what it was. And the regret arrived on multiple fronts at once. A step down that nobody remembers is a step down that everybody eventually falls into. So the pit became a genuine hazard for children, older relatives, and anyone carrying a tray or holding a drink. It was almost impossible to furnish or rearrange because the seating was built into the architecture itself. It gathered dust, dropped food, and lost toys in a way flat floors never did. And when tastes changed, there was no easy repaint, no simple swap. Undoing a conversation pit means rebuilding the floor of your house from the structure up, framing, subfloor, and all. One of the most expensive reversals in all of home remodeling. Real estate agents came to dread the listing photo of a sunken pit because it signaled a buyer would either love it as a novelty or subtract the cost of ripping it out from every offer they made. So the teal velvet pit from the very start of this video, the one that would not sell, was the purest example of this whole pattern in action. The boldest, most dramatic, most of the moment choice a homeowner could possibly make, which is exactly why it aged into the biggest regret and the most costly one to escape. That is the thread running through all 20 of these. The bolder the statement, the harder the fall. Because the same drama that makes a trend thrilling to install is the same drama that makes it impossible to live with, and even harder to undo. The safe herd choice like gray dates because everyone made it. The bold solo choice like the pit dates because nothing that loud ever stays in fashion for long. Trends promise you a feeling. Novelty, status, belonging, connection. And your own brain is wired to adapt to that feeling and start craving the next one, usually within about a year. So the real lesson buried in all of this is quieter than any trend. The homes that never seem to date are the ones built around how people actually live, not around what happened to be everywhere the year the owners picked up a paintbrush. Function first, fashion a distant second. If this rewired how you think about your own space even a little, subscribe. Because next week, we are breaking down the design choices that quietly do the opposite. The ones that make a home feel calmer, richer, and more expensive without ever chasing a single trend. That one is going to change how you feel about every room in your house. Chapter 5. The price of being impossible to sell.
Some of the most expensive upgrades ever added to a home are the exact reason it never sold. These were not bad decisions made by careless people. They were deliberate choices, choices that real estate agents still talk about in hushed voices years after the fact. Some of these will make you laugh. Some will make you deeply uncomfortable if you own one right now. Stay for number 1. It is the kind of thing no renovation budget on earth can fix, and sellers find out the hard way every single time. These are 20 expensive home features that made houses nearly impossible to sell. Number 20. The indoor swimming pool. Let me be fair to this one for a moment. When a homeowner in suburban New Jersey installed an indoor pool in 1978, it was genuinely considered a status symbol. It meant money. It meant permanence. It meant something. Here is what it means to a buyer today. $80,000 in deferred maintenance. Humidity damage working its way into the structural walls. Insurance premiums that make people physically wince. Buyers walk in, see it, and immediately start doing math they did not come here to do. The pool is rarely the problem. The infrastructure surrounding it is everything. Number 19. The converted wine cellar. This one starts as something genuinely valuable. A proper wine cellar, stone or brick, original to the house, temperature controlled, can add meaningful value in certain markets. Original estate cellars from the early 20th century in parts of Pennsylvania and Virginia are listed as premium features. Then someone converts it into a bedroom for a teenager, or a storage room for flat-pack furniture boxes, or, and this is real, a home gym with rubber flooring glued directly over original limestone. The buyers who would have paid more for that cellar are gone. The buyers who remain do not understand why the basement smells slightly wrong. Number 18. The sunken living room. In 1972, if you had a sunken living room, you were the envoy of your street. 3 or 4 steps down into a carpeted conversation pit. It said, "This house was designed. Someone thought about this." What it says now is different. Buyers with young children or elderly relatives see steps and mentally calculate emergency room visits. Appraisers increasingly note them as accessibility concerns. Contractors quote $5,000 to $15,000 just to fill and level the floor, before new flooring, baseboards, or matching wall height. Nobody wants to pay to undo someone else's statement piece. If you are already seeing your own house differently, and we are only 3 items in, you might want to subscribe before this list gets worse. It gets worse. Number 17. The mirrored walls and ceilings. There is a particular kind of silence that happens during a showing when the agent opens a door and the buyers see themselves reflected from 4 directions simultaneously. It is not a comfortable silence. Floor-to-ceiling mirror panels were installed across thousands of American homes between 1975 and 1989. Master bedrooms, dining rooms, entryways. They were meant to create drama. They created drama, just not the kind anyone wanted later. The adhesive used to mount mirror panels often damages the drywall beneath, meaning buyers are not just removing mirrors. They are rebuilding walls, and they know that now before they even make an offer. Number 16. Carpet in the bathroom. I will be honest. The first time I saw this in a listing, I assumed it was a photographing error. It is not. Wall-to-wall bathroom carpeting was a documented luxury feature throughout the 1960s and 70s. The logic made a kind of sense. Warmth underfoot, softness, something that felt like a hotel. Manufacturers marketed specific bathroom carpet lines. It was sold, installed, and praised by design magazines. What it actually does is absorb moisture for decades, trap bacteria below the surface layer, and develop a smell that professional cleaning does not fully fix. Home inspectors flag it immediately. Buyers smell it before they understand what they are smelling. No one has ever walked into a carpeted bathroom and offered full asking price. That has never happened. Number 15. The built-in intercom system. Walk through any house built between 1965 and 1985 in an upper-middle-class American suburb, and there is a reasonable chance you will find it. A beige plastic panel mounted into the kitchen wall. A speaker grill. A dial, buttons whose labels no longer match anything connected. These systems were sophisticated for their time. Families could communicate room to room. Some piped music throughout the house. In 1972, that was remarkable technology. Today, it is a wall-mounted reminder that the house has not been substantially updated in 50 years. Removing the units is simple enough. Patching the holes, matching the paint, and dealing with the wiring running through the walls belongs to an electrical era. No contractor is eager to revisit. Number 14. The oversized whirlpool bath. Here is the thing about the oversized whirlpool tub. The 90s buyer genuinely wanted it. They asked for it by name. They paid a premium. 48 by 72 inches of jets and recirculated water, usually in a corner, usually in a color that was fashionable once. Today's buyer has already done the math. Filling that tub uses between 80 and 100 gallons per use. The jets require cleaning with a specialized solution every few weeks, or they develop biofilm inside the pipes, which is as unpleasant as it sounds. The space could be a walk-in shower, which is what 63% of buyers say they actually want. The tub stays because removing it requires a plumber, a tile specialist, and probably a structural review. And so it sits there, a monument to what someone else wanted. Number 13. The heavily themed room. Let me describe something that is sitting in a house on the market right now, somewhere in this country. A bedroom with floor-to-ceiling murals of a medieval castle. custom-built bunk beds shaped like turrets, iron wall sconces wired directly into the lighting circuit, and stone effect wallpaper installed with a commitment that suggests the owner seriously considered a drawbridge. The family who built it loved it. Their child has strong feelings about it. Every buyer who walks in sees a gut renovation and mentally deducts $12,000. The problem is not the craftsmanship. The craftsmanship is often excellent. The problem is that personalization at this level is the opposite of what a buyer needs. They need to see their own life in the room, not yours. Number 12, the unpermitted garage conversion. This one is less funny and more quietly devastating. In cities across California, Florida, and Texas, thousands of homeowners converted garages into livable space without pulling permits. A bedroom, a game room, an in-law suite. The work was sometimes done beautifully by licensed contractors who simply did not file the paperwork because the owner did not want to wait. At the point of sale, the lender orders an appraisal. The appraiser compares legal square footage on record against the physical structure. They do not match. The lender will not finance what does not legally exist. The deal collapses, or the price drops to cash buyer territory, or the seller retroactively pursues permits, which sometimes requires opening walls to prove what is inside them. The permit cost would have been a few $100s. The consequences run tens of thousands. Number 11, the in-ground trampoline. This was marketed as the ultimate backyard upgrade of the 2000s, flush with the lawn, invisible from the street, and safe because the frame sat below grade. Parents across the American suburbs paid $3,000 to $8,000 to have them installed. Insurance adjusters looked at them and saw an attractive nuisance, which is the actual legal term for a feature that invites injury, particularly to children who do not live at the property. Some carriers refuse to cover homes with in-ground trampolines. Others add a significant premium and specific exclusions. Removal runs between $1,500 and $4,000. The concrete footings need filling. The lawn around the perimeter takes years to recover fully. Buyers see a hole where something used to be, and they ask questions sellers do not enjoy answering. Number 10, radiant ceiling heat. Here is a feature that almost nobody outside the construction industry knows exists, and that is part of the problem. Between 1950 and 1970, radiant electric heating was embedded in the ceilings of hundreds of thousands of American homes, particularly in the Northeast. Thin, electrical resistance cables set in plaster, no ductwork, silent. When it works, it works. When it fails, and it fails, repairing it means opening the ceiling to find a break in the cable that could be anywhere along its run. That is not a small job. In many homes, sections have been quietly disabled over the decades as zones failed and owners simply closed the vents on a system that no longer had vents to close. An inspector notes it. A buyer researches it. And then the credit request arrives. Number 9, the bold exterior paint color. This is the one people argue about. Because color is personal, homeowners have rights, art is subjective, and who is anyone to say? Then the appraisal comes back. Research from real estate analytics firms has consistently found that highly unconventional exterior colors, deep saturated purples, near black on traditional architectural styles, aggressive orange, can reduce appraised value by between 5 and 10% compared to neighboring properties. Not because of a rule, because buyers factor it into their offers, because they imagine explaining the purple house to their friends, because they picture the cost of repainting before they have unpacked a box. The sellers who pushed back on this finding are the sellers who sat on the market the longest. Number 8. The urban septic system. This one requires a moment of context to fully appreciate. In rural areas, a septic system is expected and unremarkable. In a neighborhood with full municipal sewer access, a home still operating on a private septic system is a flag, sometimes a significant one, depending on the system's age and the reason it was never connected to the main line. Some lenders require sewer connection as a condition of financing. The connection cost varies by location and density, but in urban markets, it can run from $8,000 to $25,000 or more when street excavation is involved. Whoever ends up paying for it, the negotiation over who pays for it almost never goes smoothly. Number 7. The luxury home theater. Let me tell you what $100,000 looked like in 2006 versus 2024. In 2006, a fully built-in home theater, acoustic wall panels, tiered seating on a raised platform, a projector system, custom cabinetry housing the equipment rack, was a genuine selling point in the high-end market. Listings called it out in the first line. Buyers requested it during searches. In 2024, the projector uses a connection standard that no current device supports. The receiver in the rack has been out of production for 14 years. The tiered platform means the room cannot be used for anything else without demolition. Streaming made the entire concept feel nostalgic in a way that does not serve the seller. $100,000 of investment appraised at a fraction of that. And the buyers who might have wanted it already have a television and a subscription. Number 6. The leased solar panels. This is the one that blindsides people. Not because solar is a bad idea, it is not. But the execution creates a problem at closing that sellers genuinely do not see coming until it is too late. Owned solar panels add measurable value to a home. Studies consistently show this. They reduce utility costs, they transfer cleanly, and buyers understand them immediately. Leased solar panels are a financial instrument attached to the property. The lease transfers to the buyer, meaning the buyer inherits a monthly payment and a contract term that may run another 12 to 15 years. Some buyers walk. Some lenders complicate the financing. Some lease companies require a full buyout before transfer at a cost that exceeds the remaining value of the system. The seller installed panels they believed were an asset. They listed them proudly in the marketing materials. And then the deal collapsed over a contract the seller had stopped reading 3 years earlier. Number 5. The unpermitted addition. This is where the list stops being about aesthetics and starts being about legal and financial reality that does not negotiate. Thousands of homeowners over the past 4 decades added rooms, converted attics, enclosed porches, or finished basements without permits. Sometimes contractors skipped the paperwork to save time. Sometimes homeowners did the work themselves and did not know it was required. Sometimes everyone involved simply looked the other way. Here is what happens. The buyer's inspector finds the addition. The buyer's attorney checks permit records. The records do not match the structure. The lender will not finance space that does not legally exist. Options: narrow quickly, a cash buyer, a significant price reduction, or retroactive permitting that sometimes reveals work which cannot pass current code without being demolished and rebuilt. Saving a few $100s in permit fees a decade ago is now costing tens of thousands at closing, and there is no version of that conversation that goes well. Number 4. The swimming pool without required fencing. In 1986, Virginia became one of the first states to mandate barrier requirements around residential pools. Other states followed through the 90s and the 2000s. Some did not, or left enforcement at the county level with wildly inconsistent results. Here is the consequence. A homeowner in a state with mandatory pool barrier laws, and there are now more than 30 of them, who sells a home with a non-compliant pool is selling a home that cannot pass inspection as is. The lender will not close. The buyer's insurance will not bind. The transaction physically cannot complete until the fence is installed, inspected, and approved by the relevant authority. The pool was installed before the law changed. The seller did not build it wrong. But the law does not grandfather the liability. And discovering this 3 days before closing is a particular kind of misery that no one forgets. Number 3. The asbestos insulation. Asbestos was not a mistake. That is the part people forget, and it matters for understanding why this problem is still so widespread. Between 1930 and 1970, asbestos was the most effective insulating material widely available. Heat-resistant, fire-resistant, inexpensive to produce. It appeared in wall insulation, pipe wrapping, floor tiles, ceiling tiles, and roofing products across millions of American homes. Contractors installed it in good faith because it worked, and because nobody yet understood what disturbing its fibers would eventually do to human lungs. The research changed over 2 decades of study. The Environmental Protection Agency began restricting use in the 1970s. Specific products were banned in the 1980s. The problem is that intact, undisturbed asbestos-containing material is not necessarily an immediate hazard, but it is an immediate disclosure. The moment the word appears in an inspection report, a percentage of buyers disengage, not because of the actual risk assessment, but because the word carries a weight that facts alone cannot lift. Remediation costs range from $1,500 for a contained area to well over $30,000 for a full structure. And the negotiation that follows an asbestos finding is one of the most difficult in residential real estate, because the seller cannot credibly minimize it and the buyer cannot credibly ignore it. Number 2, the foundation issue hidden under a renovation. Here is what happened in a house in Atlanta, Georgia in 2019. The sellers had owned the home for 12 years. They renovated the kitchen, quartz countertops, custom cabinetry, a farmhouse sink. They updated both bathrooms. They replaced the flooring throughout. The house showed beautifully. They listed at a price that reflected the investment. The inspector went into the crawl space. Foundation movement, lateral displacement on 2 support piers, evidence of soil shift that the seller said they had not noticed. Perhaps they genuinely had not, but the hairline pattern in the tile grout, which the inspector photographed, from floor level, told a different story about how long the movement had been occurring beneath the renovation. The buyers walked. The sellers spent 14 months and $60,000 on foundation repair before relisting. The second time it sold below the original asking price, after the renovation and after the repair. Every cosmetic upgrade in the world does not touch the structure. And the inspector always goes into the crawl space. Number 1. The stigmatized property. This is the one that no renovation addresses, no budget resolves, no staging conceals, and sellers almost always discover it at the worst possible moment. A stigmatized property carries a history, a death, a violent crime, a documented event that received enough attention to become permanently searchable by anyone with a browser and 30 seconds. In more than 20 American states, disclosure laws now exist. Sellers are legally required to inform buyers of certain events that occurred on the property, depending on the nature and recency of those events. Here is what that looks like in practice. A family purchases a home. Something terrible happens inside it. Years pass. They sell, they disclose, the price reflects it. The next buyer thinks of it as old history. They renovate thoroughly. They do not tell the agent everything. They list. A buyer's agent searches the address because buyers search addresses now routinely before the second showing. They find the news article from 12 years ago. They find the discussion threads. They show the buyers. The deal ends. In documented cases, the price reduction required to close on a stigmatized property runs between 10 and 25% below comparable homes in the same area. In extreme situations, high-profile crimes, events with sustained media coverage, properties sit for years. One house in California, connected to a nationally covered crime, took 11 years to sell after a full renovation because the search result appeared before the listing photos. There is a layer of a home's history that paint cannot reach, that floors cannot reach, that the best real estate photography ever taken cannot cover. The history exists inside the walls and inside every search engine simultaneously, and it will be there for every buyer who comes after. That is the feature no one installs, but everyone eventually inherits. Every item on this list was, at some point, a selling point. Someone marketed it. Someone bought it. Someone stood in the driveway feeling proud.
Before you go, one honest offer. If you want to do this yourself, everything we do on this channel, reading the quality and the red flags before you buy, and turning an old house into something cheap to run, is laid out step by step in my guides, down in the description. A single guide is $24, or you can grab the whole system for $37, and it all comes with a 7-day money-back guarantee, so if it doesn't earn its keep, you get your money back. No questions asked. It's the shortcut for anyone who would rather act than guess.
What changed was not the feature. What changed was everything around it. And the feature had no way to change with it. Drop a comment if you have ever walked through a home and felt something was wrong before anyone told you anything. I read every one. If this changed how you see what a home actually is, hit like, hit subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.